My guest this morning is Paul Haysom from Global TV. But Global BC TV really goes throughout all this province and most of Canada. Is that true, Paul?
That's true. Yes, we are, especially on satellite now. You can get me, I think, all the way the other side of the country and all the way down to the USA as well. So we're casting a wide net, if you will.
So what drew you to the broadcasting business?
Well, to be quite honest, it was a bit of a failed sports career that got me interested in journalism. I've always had journalism in my family. It's in my blood. My father was a newspaperman on Fleet Street. My mom was a journalist as well. So we grew up with journalism and just asking questions around us in our day-to-day lives. But I really took a shining to sports. I was in love with every single sport, and hockey was my number one. And it's kind of funny coming from two British parents who couldn't really skate that well that I took up hockey, but I just had a passion for it. It was so Canadian. It was so incredible. And I started playing junior hockey, but the problem is I stopped growing when I was 5'7".
Yeah.
And so it's tough to make the NHL when you're my height. So I thought, you know what? I love journalism. I love talking to people. Why don't I try and parlay that into a sports journalism career? And so I went to school for that. I got an internship first at Czech News in Victoria, and that turned on into an on-air experience. And I got to be a sports news anchor, but it wasn't the highlights that really I loved and enjoyed. For me, it was the storytelling. So telling the stories about the people, and I would call it beyond the box score, if you will. So I'd be able to tell the stories of athletes and just their stories, where they came from, their highs, their lows. And I just love that. I love that there was a personal element to just something I was watching as far as athletics. And from there, I thought, you know what, that's news every single day. Sports gets really kind of focused on the box score. And I still love sports, don't get me wrong. And I think there's a need for it within news. But I really wanted to try news. And so they opened BC One here, which was a 24-hour news network. And I left the on-air experience. I came in as a producer, and they hired me as a producer to put shows together. And I think it really helped me because it allowed me to understand how shows got together, what flows well into something else, what doesn't really work. And there was a lot of young people who came in. I think the average age was probably 22, 23, but we came in and sort of cut our teeth in the newsroom across from the others at Global BC, who were the heavy hitters, your John Daly's, your, Ramina Deas, your people who have done this for a long time, and they could really show us the way. And so from there, I got sent to Calgary to cover the horrific floods there, and met the news director. He gave me a job as the 11 o'clock news anchor. So I went back on air, fell in love with Calgary, and fell in love with both the anchoring and the storytelling. So I was kind of getting the best of both worlds. And then the morning show job came up in Vancouver, and this is home. So I applied, I came back, and that's where I've been ever since.
Have you always wanted to be in the broadcasting business?
I think so. I mean, it's certainly changed over the years. I don't want to say like I grew up wanting to be Walter Cronkite, but I think always there's been a vision towards some sort of storytelling. And I think that's always been such a passion of mine, being able to tell stories, share stories, listen to stories, and just have journalism ingrained in me from such a young age. It truly is a mirror of society. And for me, that mirror shows horrific and bad, and that is news, but it also shows wonderful, inspiring, love. And I think that's a mirror that's just as important as the bad news, so to speak. And I think that being able to tell those stories every single day, like, we have the best job in the world. We get to tell the stories of inspiration and give us a reason to get up the next morning as well. So I take the job very seriously.
So what, first of all, attracted you to television?
Well, they were hiring. Really, radio was where my passion was. I was always told I had a pretty decent voice. I never really cared about being on TV, but there was a job opening in sports on TV. And so you should see my first demo reels or my first air checks. So when I was on air, I had, the ski jump hair going straight up. I have the sideburns down to here. Now I have a beard, but I had the sideburns down to here. I had a suit and tie that didn't fit. And for some reason, I wouldn't look directly into the camera. I'd always look up like this. And so I don't know how I read the words. I don't know how anyone watched it and thought, yeah, let's bring this guy back tomorrow. But someone took a chance on me back then. They saw something, and I've been able to at least get it together at certain aspects along my career, and still a work in progress. When I have the perfect show, I will retire, and I don't think I'm going to be retiring anytime soon. So I'm not too worried about that.
You have a very good voice. Is that something you think you were born with, or has that developed over the years of broadcasting?
That's a really good question, because there's times when I'd like to think that I'm just using my regular voice, but then I'll watch back an air check, or I'll see something or hear a promo or something. I'll be like, wow, I'm really selling that, aren't I? Like, I'm using my broadcast voice there. And I think there is a difference. You just want to make sure that you are making sure that the room can hear you. But I think I've always, and my brothers and sisters will tell you that I've always liked to be the center of attention. And so I'm the fourth of four kids. And sometimes you need that deep, loud voice to make sure that the rest of the family hears you. So that was probably the precipice for having it. And I'd like to think I use my real voice as much as I do, but I'm sure there's a bit of broadcasting in there as well.
So what would you say is the most challenging story or challenging period of your broadcasting career? And what was that story?
I mean, there's been a couple. I mean, the current situation right now, given COVID and just the disdain for a lot of people towards the media, that has been really tough, because it's something that matters. People's viewpoints matter, and all sides matter, and making sure that all voices are heard. That's a really, really important piece of any journalist, any journalism, any story that you're telling. You can't just tell it from one side, and you can't tell it in a biased way. But it's hard, because there's vitriol towards the media, and there's people who don't want to hear from us and don't want to speak with us. And there's been cases of, I know, some news organizations taking decals off their car because they're scared for their safety. One of our employees had to take their mask off in an anti-mask rally because they didn't want to be attacked. And so it's making sure that we're doing whatever we can in a safe way to make sure that these voices are heard, because we are that mirror of society, and it matters. Those voices, whether we want to hear them, you want to hear them or not, they're an important piece of it. So I think that's been a real challenge. Something that really helped me grow is when I was a news anchor in Calgary, and it was a story about a young boy, Nathan O'Brien, who went missing north of the city. And it was a story that was prolonged for a long period of time. The family were just incredible people. They loved their son so much. And I got to know them because I was telling the story, and we were following the story for months and months. And day he was finally found, his remains were found, I had to break the news on air to the people of Calgary, but really they took us in Edmonton too. So it was the people of Alberta. And it was the closest time I've ever come to breaking down on air, but it was so important. The story was bigger than my emotions at that time. The story was more important so that I could really honor this little boy's legacy who was taken way too soon. And so that was a real big moment for me in realizing I can rise above a moment to understand that this matters. And I think at the end of the show, I did the 11 o'clock news. So we'd always end with something silly. I mean, you're competing with the late night TV at that point. But I think I said, I didn't have anything written down, and I just looked in the camera and I said, and we ran a couple pictures of him. I said, this is typically the time in the show when we talk about something light, something fun. Like today, that doesn't feel appropriate. Today, we want to show some pictures of a young man who was taken way too soon. May he rest in peace. And I remember we ended with a bit of music and some pictures, and then just dipped to black. And I cried like a baby for about 20 minutes after it, because it was emotions that I had bottled here, and I knew I had to be professional for the broadcast. But the second that was over, I was gone. Even talking about it right now makes me a little emotional, because I still work with the family, and they're still so incredible, and they do everything they can. And I think a lot of it has to do with mental health, but a lot of it has to do with just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And it's anytime there's children involved, it's hard for me not to get emotional. And I think we're moving into a place where it's okay. It's okay to be emotional. It's okay to be vulnerable to your viewers, because that helps build the trust. They know I'm not a robot who's going to sit there and in a suit and read them headlines and not have any emotion towards it. I mean, this is an emotional time in this world, and it's okay to be an emotional person, but you also have to be unbiased because you need to make sure that that story is being told from all sides. So it's been those were two really important stories, and the COVID story is not done by any stretch, but there were also big stories in my career that's kind of taught me who I am as well.
Are there any secrets for on-air personalities such as you to keep your emotions in check halfway through the story?
Oh, that's a really good question. I mean, I don't want to give them all away because then you'd be knowing when I'm doing them. We do have a cough button. And the cough button is just a little button on the inside of the desk. You press it and just mute your microphone for a second. And that sometimes can be used. What I like to do personally, if I'm reading a story that is really emotional, is almost disassociate yourself from the story for a second. So just kind of try and clean slate it and almost just read the words. And I know that doesn't sound great because, you know, you have to be genuine in your delivery and you have to read a story for what it is. But if a story is really hitting me over the course of a morning, I'll try and disassociate for just a second, read the words, and then I sort of get back into reading it as a genuine person, but as a professional. And you're kind of a mixture of both, because people can tell if I'm reading a story and it just sounds like this and this is nothing because I have no inflection anywhere. But if I'm actually reading a story that's genuine and coming from my heart, then I will take a moment, just start reading the words, and then kind of kick back into, okay, you can do this. And I think that's honestly, that works for me. I also have a co-anchor, and that's really helpful. So if something goes awry, they can take over, or vice versa. If someone's having a coughing fit or having a, just can't speak, and we talk for 4 hours, so you get a little dry in the throat. So sometimes it's nice to have a bailout. So in the morning show, we look after each other, and I can tell if someone needs help, I'll either jump in, or you can tell if they're going to be able to make it through it. So
now this broadcast we're doing today was going to be done a few weeks ago, but you were getting married to the love of your life. And
yeah, that old thing I had to do. Sorry about that.
Somebody, I assume you sent me the pictures of you and your wife, and you look like you're on a lake in the interior, and your doggy's there, and it looks like you're on ice and what have you. Tell us about that. Where was that, and how did that make you feel, and how did you propose to her?
Well, Nikki, or Laura, but Nikki as I call her, Papook, is just the most incredible person I've ever met. She's just so kind and compassionate. And we've known each other for a very long time, but only really been dating for about 4 years leading up to our wedding. But she also works in the industry, and she's just hilarious and honestly, truly, like you said, my best friend. And so I proposed to her in Gibson's, which is on the Sunshine Coast. And it's just one of our favorite places. We love hiking. We love being outside. And so we took our dog Fuller for a hike, and I packed a picnic. And once we got to the top and I caught my breath, I made sure to get down on one knee and ask if she'd do me the honor of spending the rest of her life with me. And so thankfully she said yes. And I brought a little bit of champagne with me to the top. So we popped some champagne, walked down, and then, that was in June. And then now it was in February 5th is when we got married. So we got married at Osprey Lake, which is in between Princeton and Summerland. It's honestly one of the most beautiful places on the entire planet. You mentioned South Okanagan, the Similkameen Valley is where it is, and it is stunning. But Osprey Lake is where her father lives, and her dad is one of really only a handful of people who live there year round. And so it holds a very special place in our hearts, both in the winter and in the summer. And it's just sort of our safe place where we can go and disassociate from the news, disassociate from COVID, from everything else that's going on. We can just go and relax and breathe a little bit. So we just thought it was the perfect location to tie the knot. We went there with very small amount of guests because we're in these COVID times, but it was perfect because we were able to share it with them truly and actually spend time with each of them who came up there. So just really family and some really close friends. And for me, as a hockey nut, I got to play some outdoor hockey on my wedding day morning, and then I got to marry my best friend, as you said. So it was quite easily the best day of my life, I'd say.
Did she have any idea during this proposal period that somewhere in this, let's say 10 minutes or whatever it was, that you were going to ask this question? Did she think, uh-oh,
I don't think so, although maybe she's not telling me that because I was getting concerned because we were up at the top and, it was a little bit later in the day. We were worried that the sun was going to set. And there was another group right next to us who were just kind of hanging around and enjoying it as well, because you get stunning views overlooking the Sunshine Coast, over looking back towards Horseshoe Bay. So these people just wanted to be there. And I'm kind of saying to her, these people are just hanging out here. What's going on? Why aren't they leaving? She's like, what do you care? Like, they're enjoying this too. Just enjoy it. Oh, I am. But I just want, and I'm a pretty laid back person. So she must have been like, what is going on with him right now? Thankfully, they took off and then I got down on one knee. But so maybe she had an idea it was coming, but I'm hoping that I still caught her by surprise as well.
I think the one knee probably triggered it off, huh?
That probably gave it away. Yeah, at that point, she's like, either he's in trouble or he's proposing. It could have gone either way. So,
so what are your ambitions as a broadcaster in Canada?
That's a really good question, because a lot of the jobs and opportunities that I've tracked down have sort of, they've become available because I've just sort of focused my world that way. And I really did want to focus on news. And I saw they were starting this 24-hour news network. And so I went there. And then as a producer, I went and helped and did some on-air work in Calgary. And I really fell in love with being on air again and storytelling. But I don't know what the future holds for me. I love my job right now. I love being able to build a relationship with our viewers in the morning. It truly is just such an honor every single day here in British Columbia. But I know that I don't know where news is going, and I don't know how news is going to be consumed. It seems to be changing by the minute. Some people are consuming it on their phones. Some people are consuming it online. A lot of people are cutting their cable. So maybe it's going to be through Netflix. I know Prime already offers global news. So it's something that I'm interested to know where it's going. So I don't want to hang my hat on any one position or any one job. But for me, just making sure that I'm still telling stories, being a storyteller, being genuine in my delivery, and having a relationship with our viewers. And I think that as long as I have those things, whatever path that goes, I know it's going to be the right one, because those are kind of important pillars for me as a journalist, and making sure that our journalism stands up, our stories stand up, making sure that, everyone can tell stories now. They have cameras and people can, follow along to different people and personalities. But for us, we take telling good, unbiased stories and telling them in a way that is easy to consume, but it's so important that they consume it from professionals. It doesn't have to be from us, but it needs to be from reliable journalistic sources. And that is really, really important to me.
What is the most interesting interview you've ever had? And who has that been?
That is a really good question. I should have prepared an answer for that. I've had some fun ones. I got to interview the Prime Minister. That was tough. Got to interview Premier Horgan. That was good. An interview I did was actually when I was in Alberta. And it was one that really mattered to me because it was a politician who was flip-flopping between parties and really going after people from his old party, but also kind of going after people in his community. And I won't name names because if people know who I'm talking about, they probably saw the interview. But I really did a lot of research going into it. And I started finding quotes from him from years ago. And I really dug in and made sure that I had done my own research and that I knew where I was coming from and that I could ask the questions in a confident way. And I was still trying to find my voice at the time, and sat down with him. And there's one regret in that interview, is that I gave him a little too much leeway at the beginning, because I let him kind of wax poetic about why he was making the change and why he's the best person for the job. And then I went at him, and I made sure that I had my facts straight and I knew where I was coming from. And I just held his feet to the fire, and I kept pushing and pushing and pushing until eventually he kind of got to a place where he's like, you know what, you're right. And he sort of admitted to screwing up and how this wasn't the right direction. And I was just as shocked as I'm sure our viewers were at the time, because I wasn't expecting him to go there. But I think he knew that I had him cornered, and I had something that he knew I knew, and that he knew I wasn't getting down. I mean, I got a morning show. I got 4 hours. I got all the time in the world to make sure you get there. And he got there. And that was a really cool moment for me because it, one, showed me how important journalism is and good journalism is, because you really need to know your facts, but you also need to hold these people in power accountable. And it was, that to me was like, I was giddy after it because I'm like, yes, like this is why we do this. This is why I got into this. So that was a really cool one. Another one I really loved was Bob Cole. And Bob Cole wrote a book. He's a play-by-play announcer and Hockey Night in Canada. I think he's retired now. He still did the odd game, but he wrote a book, and I read the book, and just being able to talk to him and pick his brain a little bit about some stories. And I remember, I played a few moments for him, and some of the good and some of the bad, and some are like, they were going home, and some of those ones, but just being able to talk to him and say, like, you were the soundtrack for these moments for a lot of people, for a lot of Canadians. And what does that feel like? And he was so eloquent and so wonderful, but I think he was also really tickled that I'd done my research and found those moments for him as well. And so it was, I think it's good to be able to have variety in the way and know when it's time to push and know when it's time to respect and know when it's time to sometimes, deal with it slowly and tempered, because it's going to be tough for the viewers to take in as well. And so I think we do a lot of work when we're talking about racial injustice. I know the Indigenous population they're such an important voice, and we want to give them a platform. And on the Day for Truth and Reconciliation, we had every single one of our guests was Indigenous, and we took it a step further and we made sure every song we played on our morning show over the 4 hours was from an Indigenous artist. And highlighting those voices and highlighting voices that have been pushed down for so long is such an important part of what we do. And it's something that I take very seriously. And I think that we have a platform, but that platform comes with a massive responsibility. And I think that we still have a long way to go. And no doubt we have a long way to go in a lot of racial issues, gender issues. I think females have been pushed down for too long as well. And I think that the world has a long way to go, but media has a very important role to play in that. And I take that very seriously.
My last question, what would your advice be for young men and women who would like to get into the broadcasting business? What do they need to do? How do they need to prepare? And what kind of mindset do they need to have that this could be a fabulous career that they could grow as men and women?
I think find something that makes you passionate, whatever it is, whether it's telling stories of racial issues, whether it's telling sports, whether it's going on the radio and putting top 40, whether it's being an investigative journalist. Do everything. Because right now, the new age journalist has to. You kind of have to be a shooter, an editor, you have to be a writer, you have to be a producer, you have to have a multifaceted set of skills. And you really need to do it all to understand where that passion lies. And that's something I did. I just did everything. And I didn't say no. There was never a job too small or too big. I wanted to do everything. And in that, you will find your passion, or you may not. You may find that, you know what, this isn't for me, because the pay isn't really that great. The public persona isn't always that great, but if you're passionate about it, it's the best job in the world. And so I think ask questions, listen, and find someone who does what you want to do. Once you do find that passion, you can try and emulate it, but make sure you find your own voice as well, because no one just wants a carbon copy of what we've seen before. I want you. And I want you in your genuine self. So you can take pieces of people and things you enjoy, but make sure you're being your genuine self. And I truly believe, and this goes beyond broadcasting, this goes to anything we do, that positive people will always succeed. If you stay positive in what you do and who you are, and be positive to everyone. And I'm not talking about the people in power who you want to emulate or your bosses. Absolutely be positive to them. But be positive to the cleaning staff, to the receptionist. Be positive to the people you meet on the street. Someone comes up to you and say, hey, I noticed you, or you're the guy from the news, right? You be a positive person in their life. We need to spread more positivity. And I feel good things happen to good people. And I truly believe that. And if you're a good person, world's your oyster, man.
Agree with you 100%. Agree with you 100%. Paul, thank you so much for this interview. It's a lot better then I thought you've made me feel a lot better about interviewing you. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful long-term marriage.
Well, thank you very, very much. Both Nikki and I fully appreciate that. And thank you for taking the time to talk to me. It's an honor to speak with you. I had the pleasure of interviewing you not too long ago, and you left me with a couple of very important things, one of which was time, because as journalists, we often forget to be on time. And you said you stressed the importance of just being on time. And if you say something to someone, do it. And if you say you're going to be there at a certain time, be there. And it was only a short time ago, so I'm not going to give myself too much credit, but I've lived by those words. I thought, Peter Legge would want me to be on time here, so I'm going to leave a little bit early. So what you say sticks with people as well. And I just truly an honor to talk to you. So thank you.
My pleasure, Paul. Thank you so much.